Now and forever, we bring IT to life.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to this month's Connect with Remedy webinar. Today we're presenting on UDM Best Practices in Troubleshooting. During the presentation, if you have any questions, you can ask them interactively during the presentation via the Q&A pod, and our panelists will answer those questions. If there are any questions that need more detail or research to answer, those will be reviewed and published with the final Q&A when the recording is published a week from today's date. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Murali, a lead product developer with BMC. Go ahead, Murali.
Thanks, Greg. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Murali Viswanathan. I'm a lead product developer from the ITSM R&D team. This is a monthly series of webinars called Remedy, Connect with Remedy, and this month's presentation will be on UDM Best Practices and Troubleshooting. Throughout the webinar, as Greg said, you can ask questions on the Q&A panel in the WebEx event. Our panel will answer the questions live during the presentation, and I will answer any remaining questions at the end. Today, we will cover UDM configurations, the configuration checker utility, how to configure UDM for a server group environment, UDM best practices, troubleshooting issues or errors, and how to customize UDM jobs to add your custom fields. And finally, we will go over for Q&A. Our main page of the data management topic has an overview of the steps for planning, preparing, and loading your data. This page also contains two videos that are very important for you to understand UDM before you use it to load any data. Follow these links for the basic configurations. The first link will explain you the permissions you would need to launch and run UDM jobs. A DMP user permission will give you access to create jobs, steps, and templates for the companies that you have access to. You will also be able to view all jobs that belong to your companies, but you will not be able to modify or cancel and delete jobs for other companies. DMP admin user permission can create, view, modify, cancel, or delete jobs, steps, and templates for the companies they have been given access to, including jobs that have been created by other users. So basically the difference is an admin can go and delete your jobs, right, if they have been cancelled or hanging there for a while, right? And as a user, you can only create your jobs and maintain your jobs. The second link is the first important configuration step. Users must configure a temp file area where attached files can be written at runtime, where the load step can then read and upload the spreadsheet attachments. Once you set the file path, so you access it through the application admin console, right? Then once you set the file path, you click on test and a subfolder will be created in the shared directory with your login ID. The system will need to have read access and write access to this location for the solution to work. Users will not be able to create any job until this is done. It's very important for every user to set their application preferences for data management. The link is available in the data management job console as shown here. For all users, we recommend to set the job weight setting to auto-validate and manual promote. The reason for this is this will ensure that no data is promoted to the target form and gives you an opportunity to review the data in the load forms, and then you manually remove the weight parameter for the promote to happen. Once this preference is set, all jobs loaded by this user will always have a weight set on the promote step. You should also set the parameters on when you want your promoted and non-promoted data to be cleaned up from the load forms, and when you want to delete the jobs and step data records. We highly recommend you to update the number of days here in these three fields based on your job needs. You may want to change this to a lesser number during onboarding and increase them once you're live, because you won't be loading like hundreds and thousands of data in your production environment. So you don't have to clean up in a regular basis. Again, this is a one-time setting for each user, right? And the only time you'll go back and reset it if you want to clean up the data quickly or in a delayed fashion. The data management job console checks and reports on the below configurations when you launch it. It checks if the data management load path parameter is set in the system settings form. It checks if the current AR server is configured in the UDM config form. It also checks the memory application password for the AR server configured in the UDM wrap password form. It checks if filter max total setting in the AR configuration is set to less than 500,000. It checks if the filter max stack setting in the AR configuration is set to less than 10,000. It checks if the CA plugin registry is configured to use a private queue. Checks if Cartier server is accessible and running. For server group environments, it also checks escalations configured in the server group ranking form, and if escalations are disabled in any servers, if server entries are missing in the UDM config form, and if the local server connect name is missing in UDM config form. Basically, you get a pop-up message box that gives you all the findings and issues which the checker reports on, and you'll be able to fix and relaunch the console. And when you relaunch the console, if there are any other pending errors, say for example, if you fix 4 of them and you still get a message saying that escalations are not running, then you get another opportunity to go fix them and then relaunch the console. Once the console launches without any errors, that means you're good to go, right? So these checks run behind the scenes every time you launch the console, right? So if you don't get any errors, that means your configuration is good enough. So I'm going to walk you through how to set your CA plugin registry settings and also your private queue max and min threads for a normal load scenario and a bulk load scenario. So configuration setting for a normal load scenario where I'm talking about in the hundreds and thousands in a production server, right? So what we recommend is in the total threads field here, we recommend to either have 3 or 6. In most cases, 3 is very sufficient. Use one of the fast list thread value for the private queue field. So for this field. So the fast port queues you can use is between 39620 and 39629, and we do not recommend you to use 390626 because it's used by the AR server for its loopback functionality. Now for the configuration setting for bulk loads, say you're loading in the 10,000 and 100,000 ranges for like an onboarding scenario, or even in your production if you want to load it after you go live. Basically, you have to reset these settings so that you don't get any job stuck issues or performance issues, right? So there we recommend you set the thread to 8 or 12. So that means CA plugin when running to validate and promote your data will be using 8 or 12 threads. If you configure 12, it'll use the 12 threads, and it'll basically use your data and do parallel processing in all the 12 threads. So the RPC port number. So you go to the AR configuration server information page, ports and queue tabs, and this is where you make sure that the one I selected is 390629, the fast port, and here I have used the max as 6 because that's what I want to configure, right? So make sure that whatever number you chose, the number of threads you chose on the CA plugin registry, that's all you need for the max thread. So if you're setting it as 6, you don't have to set this as 20 or 12. It's not required because it's not going to be used, right? So that's the main issues we see with customers where they have the max sets as big numbers, but basically if you're going to configure CA plugin registry to use 6 or 12 threads for UDM jobs, it's only going to use them, right? It's not going to use anything more or less. We also have a configuration checker utility. It's available as part of the AR installer package, and we highly recommend it for you to download and run it one time on each AR server. Details on how to run it in GUI and command line mode are available in this link. This is a screenshot of the link when you launch it through UI mode. So the utility runs config checks on platforms, CMDB, and applications. You can choose and run for any product you need, and we recommend running it every time any changes happen to your environment. It could be a hardware change or a software change. Just run it every time, anytime anything changes on your environment, so you can make sure that your environment is configured correctly for the product functionality, and most importantly to work properly with a better performance. Now let's see the configuration checker output for UDM checks. So these are the UDM checks which runs when you run the utility for UDM. So it basically checks for application service password, AR server configurations, the load file path which I talked about, and server names and everything. So this will be the output result file. It's a HTML output file, and if you can see there is an error in the output HTML file. And in my example, I've given a fully qualified name for the AR server name in UDM config form. The server connect name in the AR conf file does not have a fully qualified name, so that's why it's complaining that I can't connect to that server, right? So the server name in the UDM config form has to match the AR server connect name that is in the AR conf file, right? So we're going to give an IP address or a fully qualified domain. All those entries in the UDM config form is not going to matter. So you have to have the server name as the AR server connect name in the AR conf file. Now let's move on to how do I configure UDM for a server group environment. The first most important thing is you need to go create ranking records for Atrium Integration Engine, or also called AI, in the server group ranking form. Recommendation is to select a non-user facing server as your primary server, which could be your admin server or any server in your server group where a server is not being used as a user facing server. The default checkbox will be set for the primary server in the UDM config form once the server is restarted after the ranking is complete. So the changes will not take effect till your restart is completed. So you set up your server group environment, create your ranking records as you do for escalations, recon, and other stuff. Similarly, you do it for Atrium Integrated Engine as well. Then do a restart, and then you go to your UDM config form, you will see the default checkbox checked for your primary server. The second server in the ranking form, which you configured for AI, will be your failover server, and that will be used as the server to run the jobs when AR goes down in the first server. So here you see the configuration of the server group for 3 servers, right? So the Atrium Integration Engine server name value for each entry on the form, as I said, it should exactly match the server connect name. No long name, aliases, IP addresses, or host names should be entered in the UDM config form. Even if you enter it, it's not going to be used, but we recommend not to enter. And the host value for each entry should match the DI server host name. So the DI server is the service which runs in your AR monitor file, which is basically the cart plugin, which is what it is. So the cart plugin or DI server is what is used to connect your server, connect you to the servers to run your jobs, right? So which is the plugin which is used to even get your data from your spreadsheet into the load. So the is default will be set to yes for server defined as rank 1, as I told you earlier. You should not be changing is default value manually, right? And for the failover server, you don't have to put any entry there because the ranking form will take care of that. And the default port value should be 20,000. Here is the correct way to configure entries for, say, a 3-year server group environment. So in this example, the DI server plugin is enabled in all 3 servers in the server group. And this is what we recommend. And it's the best practice to follow. So we recommend you to have the DI server plugin running in all the servers in your server group. If the default server goes down, then the second server in the ranking form will run the jobs, as the plugin will be available and running to take care of the jobs. So here if you see the 1, 2, and 3 are configured, and the name, the server connect name, and the host name for the DI server plugin is all the non-qualified, non-fully qualified server name. So in this scenario, job will always run on 0.1 server, irrespective where it was triggered from and the AR server that user session is on, as the is default value is set to yes on the 0.1 server. Recommendation is to always restart AR service after making any changes to the UDM config form. Important, let's say an example. If you say there are 3 UDM jobs were running when the server 1 went down, then those will have to be reviewed, and you have to manually create a new job with the non-promoted data and run again for the second server to run the job. Failover means it's going to fail over your running jobs and automatically trigger them in the second server. No, it's just a feature available where a server is available for your UDM jobs when one server goes down, right? So you still have to go and find out which jobs which jobs are running, and then make sure you take the non-promoted data, put it in a spreadsheet as a new job and run it. And again, you can run it from any server because the UDM config form will know that it should run the second server now, right? So now it's a very most important step here on how to configure UDM wrap password. This is where I see a lot of users make mistakes. So this form is basically used to authenticate the Remedy application service password for the $server value that comes from the mid-tier. So the mid-tier $server value can be your host name, your IP address, your alias name, or your load balancer name. So it depends on how you come to your mid-tier and how the $server value resolves, right? So and then it finds the correct server name from the UDM config form and runs the job in that server, right? So make sure that this form contains all possible server name value combinations that you use, right? And then again, this changes to this form does not require a restart, but make sure that you have your IP addresses, alias names, load balancer name, everything in here for the Remedy application service password. Otherwise, in this scenario, you will see the load step getting stuck for you, and you'll get errors. Okay, here this example, I've configured 3 AR server group that has 2 aliases. So one alias is for the AR server alias name, the second one is the load balancer alias name, right? So on top of the 3 servers of the server group, I also have my alias names configured here. Okay, now let's move on to troubleshooting. So just giving you a high level like how we got into these errors. So these error information are compiled from various customer issues that BMC support and customer engineering team had worked on. Okay, so that's what we wanted to cover here. Make sure that you get benefited out of that. So all load step errors will be always available in the AR cart log and Java plugin log files on the AR server where the UDM job has run. Most load step job stuck errors are due to UDM config and wrap password form not configured correctly, right? So the examples I gave you earlier about server group, alias names, and all that good stuff. And then making sure your custom jobs and workflows are proper. So because most of the time we see that they're not done correctly as well. And the another very important issue where we see was if a server has been restored through a VM or a DB restore, we see that old server references in UDM forms, we see old processing data stuck in forms and not cleaned up, right? So the important forms where you have to go look for and clean these up are the server references should be fixed in these following 4 UDM forms: execution instance, permission info, UDM config, and wrap password. And then make sure that the other 4 following forms, you go clean up the data which has entries from the other server, right? Thread manager, CI events, CI event parameters, and UDM variable. The other things we see are hard-coded server username values in the job in Pentaho. So customer will complain that, hey, my job is stuck and it's not running. So when we go and troubleshoot, we find that someone has opened up the job in Pentaho through Spoon client and for the testing purposes, and they forgot to remove their physical server name, so that should have the parameter value and not the actual data in there. And then from an LDAP scenario, we have seen that the LDAP host and LDAP port parameters had wrong values, so it couldn't connect to the LDAP server, right? And the job was stuck in the load step. And we've seen like having spaces in the server name and also some other parameters in the config file, right, which contributed to a stuck situation. Then we also saw that DS server or COT server, which we call, are missing in the ER monitor file or basically commented out. So again, some customers used to have practice that, hey, I'm having 3 ER servers in my server group, I only want to run in one, so let me go and comment out the DS server plugin in the other 2 servers. So we highly recommend not to do that, because even though the plugin is running on the other servers, it's not doing anything. So it's not going to cause you any functional or performance issues, right? If the plugins are available, then we know that if something like a failover or if you ranked it properly, the servers are capable of running your jobs. So please don't make those mistakes. Same thing I just talked about, not all servers in the server group are configured. And another important thing, when you restore a DB, restore from another environment or a VM, make sure that sequencing engine records. So basically, these are records which gets created dynamically when you run your first UDM job, which will basically build your sequencing engine for your jobs, basically, right? So if those were not rebuilt correctly, you have to rebuild them again. So the information of how to rebuild are there in older knowledge articles, which we'll establish with you later in the references page. And we saw like escalates were not running on the servers. Load balancers, server group aliases, IP addresses were not configured on the UDM broadcast platform on a server group environment. So these are most of the troubleshooting issues we saw where either jobs are stuck and they have errors. Now let's move on to validate step kind of errors. So during your validation, you should be able to see any errors on the screen. When you navigate, when you run your job, you can navigate to the in the job step where you click on the view data button, and it will take you to the load form and it will show you your errors. So check for the error flag, check for the data which has the error flag checked, and you'll be able to see the data which had validation errors. So once you have your validation errors, you can basically review them, fix them, and rerun the same job from the error management console. The other place where you go and check for errors, if you don't see an error in your in the step form or the load form, when you click on the view data, basically go to CI events and see what's happening. Is there a timeout which has happened due to which the validate couldn't complete, or is there any other errors you see there? So that's the one place you got to go look for anything non-product related or non-workflow related kind of an issue, right? And say you have a scenario where you have errors in your validation, and you have like a many errors to take care, right? So the recommendation, as I told you earlier, right, we don't want anybody to promote any data to the target form unless you're sure about your data, right? So if you had the wait and promote set for your preferences, then it's easy for you. You can load the same data from the spreadsheet in a new job, right? And then you don't have to worry about it. And because the old job you have not promoted, you can cancel any time, or it will get automatically canceled based on your settings, right? But say you have not put a wait on your promote, so some data is promoted. So here, what people make the mistakes are they try to load the same spreadsheet again in a second job, and they run into unique index errors, some other errors. So this is what we don't recommend at all. So what we recommend is you have to go and remove the data which is already promoted. So you got to go to the load form, find out which are the data which is promoted, and then remove them from the spreadsheet, and only load that spreadsheet in a new job. So this way you will avoid any other unwanted errors. So validation errors for a CA job. So CA jobs are a little different. So and you cannot rerun a CA job from error management console. The reason being is we have CMDB in the picture as well. So your CA job has to be canceled, and the data needs to be loaded with another job. So in the validate step, you will see a message saying that waiting for reconciliation job to complete, right? And if that stays for a while, then all you need to do is you go check the recon log, how you will check it for any of your sandbox recon job or anything else, right? The same process, nothing new, right? Check for recon log, if there's any errors there, fix them, and then you come and reload the data in a new job, right? That's the main thing. So there's no other, if any other errors, the validate step will report to you, right? Even if it's a CMDB job, the validate step will report to you any other specific errors. But if you don't see any errors in the step, and if your job is still saying, hey, it's waiting for reconciliation to complete, then you still have to go and check your recon jobs to make sure that what's causing that issue. Okay. So let's move on to promote step issues. So all promote step errors, there's only one place for you to go and check CI events. Because all we do in the promote step is we basically take the data from your load form and we push it to the target form. We bypass all workflows on the target form so that the only thing we do is validated good data on the staging form or the load form to the target form. That's all we do there. So in there are a couple of things which we see very commonly in customers: unique index errors and time mode errors. You will receive unique index errors if the unique data is compromised, basically, right? So that means you can ignore these errors because you might have already loaded these data before, right? So that's one reason you get these errors, right? And if you feel that no, this data is not loaded before and there's something else causing the unique index errors, go find what is causing the unique index errors, and you may have to delete that data or fix the data, right? And then you load it, because unique index errors are data errors and nothing to do with the product. And similarly with the timeout errors. The timeout errors occur when too many processes are running on the server, and you need to find out which process is causing the timeout. And if you find out that if UDM or CAI is causing the timeout, you can always work with support and see if you can increase the CAI API timeout value, right? So if you increase the CAI API timeout value, then that timeout will go away. But if the timeout has been caused by other processes running on the server, then you basically have to wait for that process to complete or run the job in a different time, right, to get this completed, and or just cancel the job and reload the job in some other time, right, some other day. So why does promote step always stays in progress? So the main reasons we saw were you have a bulk load and you don't have enough threads to run the jobs. So that's why I showed in the configuration step earlier, like how you configure for bulk loads, right? And we also see like null values mapped and pushed to fields which needs a value, right? So you have to make sure that if you have those kind of custom mappings, you make sure that you have data for them. Or even if it's out of the box field, and if it requires a value and if you pass it now, and then you may run into those kind of issues. And errors we see on promote steps are mainly due to customization. So custom fields, selection fields, values in the target form not mapped in the load form and the job, and custom workflows not coded properly, right? Okay, best practices. So now we saw the errors what we come across, and now okay, how do I avoid any of those? So one is the configuration step, which is very important. So you configure your data, your parameters well, so that you don't run into those kind of configuration issues. Now let's see best practices on how you can load these data so that you can avoid other errors. So the basic thing is one spreadsheet, one job, right? So if you're going to load a set of data, and it's always through one job. And if there's errors, you always go back to the error management console, fix those errors, rerun, right? That's all you do. And say if some data is not promoted, and if you really want to run it on a new job, only remove the promoted data and only load the data which is not promoted, right? So it's always one spreadsheet, one job. You cannot run the same spreadsheet over and over again in different jobs. We don't recommend that at all. So that's what I talk about here. So if you wish to run a new job, then remove, do not populate partial data. So that's another important thing. So we have seen people opening a spreadsheet and adding partial data, right? So if you don't have the values for the green fields and the yellow fields, the green fields are the required values in the spreadsheet, and the yellow ones are the conditionally required fields based on other field values. You need to populate these fields, right? So you have to make sure that those values are populated by default, right? And then you load the job. Say, for example, you loaded the first job with all the fields populated, and now you load the second job for the same record, and you only fill in like 5 or 6 fields, right? Then the other fields will be null. Will be overwritten as null, right? because we don't go and do partial updates. We don't go and check field by field to see what was the previous value and all that good stuff. So the aim for UDM is to make sure that your data gets loaded, right? So if you really want to change a phone number, for example, for a person on a people's spreadsheet, you fill in every field and change the phone number and you load it, right? That's the option we have. And another thing which we see on the spreadsheet for the best practices is starting from 8102 of our versions, we have macros inbuilt with our spreadsheets. So we highly recommend you always run the macros, which will basically take up all your formatting issues, right? Your spaces, leading and trailing spaces, any .0 issues you face, all that will be taken off. As most issues fall under one of these issues, like authentication fail, wrong application password, entries not in UDM wrap password, escalations not running, ER card not running, or other core UDM forms data issues, right? So, so the best practices on load step is a job failed in the load step, you basically cannot rerun, right? So it's no rerun option for the load step, right? You have to cancel and do it in a different job. So most load step issues can be easily avoided if your environment is configured properly, right? So load step cannot happen, right? Load step means I'm trying to get your data into the load form, right? So all the configurations are mainly configuration issues. If you avoid those and configure your server properly, you will not get any load issues. And ensure your sequencing engine has all sequencing records. So these records were created when you run your first UDM job. Again, periodically clean up your UDM variable, load forms, thread manager, CI events. If you're basically in an onboarding scenario or you're trying to load large volumes of data in a span of 1 week, 2 weeks, right? So make sure that you periodically clean them. The reason is if the data gets accumulated here, you will have performance issues, right? So the best practice is always when you have a like an onboarding scenario or a bulk load scenario where I'm going to load tons and tons of data in the next 2 weeks before I go live, make sure that you do your cleanup periodically. But otherwise, once you're live and all that, as I showed you in the preferences, you can auto set it, and then the promoted data and your unwanted step jobs will get cleaned up automatically for you. But if you're in a situation where you have to take control, basically you take control so that your successive jobs will not get affected. Now let's look at how to customize your UDM jobs, right? So the first step is overlay and add your custom fields to the correct load form. Download the spreadsheet you want to customize from the spreadsheet manager screen. Rename the spreadsheet to a custom name. That's very important. So you don't want to use the out-of-the-box spreadsheet. To use a custom spreadsheet, use a custom name, and add your column to it. So if you have an out-of-the-box spreadsheet, you add your column to the last columns of the spreadsheet. And go to the ATM Spoon client, right, and create a custom job by using a copy of the out-of-the-box job you want to use. Once you open the transformation, there'll be a field mappings tab, right, and then that's where you map your custom fields. You add your validation steps in the transformation as required. For example, in the transformation, we may want to check for null values on a specific custom field. On another custom field, you may have a selection field which has six values, and you don't want to allow a seventh value, right? So you can put all your conditions and validations in the transformation there. And overlay and add your custom fields to the load filters that push data to the target form. So basically, we do have out-of-the-box filters to push data, right? So you need to overlay that and add your custom fields. And you can also add additional custom workflow for your load forms to do any additional validations for your custom fields. And finally, we want you to create a UDM template specific for your custom job. So this link gives you the details on how to customize a UDM job. So that if you go to the link, it'll give you a step-by-step details. And we also have another link which basically we put together for adding the company field to your spreadsheet, right? So, but the same example can be used even to add your custom field, right? So now I'm going to open that page and walk you through to give you an idea like what you should do to customize your. So as I said, this is basically loading foundation data for multiple companies. So that's what this page is written for. But the same steps can be easily used to add any custom fields, right? So we look here, create a custom spreadsheet to basically support your customization. So we are saying go to your application data management, spreadsheet management types, select DMC template, select foundation, and in this example we are going to customize the location spreadsheet. Okay. So download the location spreadsheet and add your custom column to the spreadsheet. Right. Rename the spreadsheet to any name you want. Then open that and add the columns to all the tabs. Right. These are the different tabs you have. And now once you open the Spoon client, right, go and look for your, so in this case, say for example, you want to customize the location transformation, open the location transformation and the job, and then save it with your name, right? So save a file as whatever name you want to give. Then once you open the transformation, go to the field mappings tab. So this is saying you need to repeat this for each of the tabs. So which you want to add custom fields to multiple, let me go back here. So for example, each of this is a tab in your spreadsheet, right? So if you want to add a custom field, say for all these sheets, then basically you need to repeat that, right? So if you want to add one custom field for each of this, so just need to repeat that step. And then once you open your field mappings, you can define your fields here, and then you map your fields here, right? So on the first step I told you, the first thing is you have to basically go overlay the load form and add your custom fields there, right? Once you do that, then it will show up here, so you can map it. So now you can save your whole job and transformation as a new company once you made all these changes or your custom fields. So this example all walks you about companies, but you can easily use this for adding any custom field. There's no changes to the procedure. And this is an important step, right? So you're going to register your job name with the console. So that way, once you go to the console, it'll show your job, your custom job, and then you can use that and create a template to load any jobs using that custom job. So go to the ATM integrated job, do a create, complete the form, right? So this is how it will look. You can give a name to it and save it. So now for the job you created, you're going to attach your spreadsheet. So you remember you created a spreadsheet, copy of a spreadsheet, a customer spreadsheet, and you added your fields. So now you're going to attach your spreadsheet to this job. So you open up the spreadsheet management screen, do a create, right? And then you select your job, and then you attach the spreadsheet here. And now you have a custom spreadsheet which is attached to a custom job, and it's ready for you to use. Now finally you go create your custom data management job template, right? So go to job console or the function search template and search for your location template which you use, right? And then you do a copy, and then you rename the template, then save. So this is giving an example of how you can just reuse instead of trying to create your own, right? So now once you create a template, you'll be able to view that template. And if you want to attach a new spreadsheet or whatever, you can also do that. So once you have your template ready, you can do you can attach your own stuff in here. So now when you go to your create job, you'll be able to see your custom job ready here. So you can use that to load in data. Say for example, you customize the location spreadsheet to add 5 or 6 custom fields. So now you have a spreadsheet with those five or six fields. You have the transformation with those fields ready, and you have a job which is calling the transformation. And with the job, you've already created a template, and now the template is ready to use with your custom job, and then all you have to do is select the job, and then you can run it. Right, so these are the transformations that can be modified. Like, I mean, this is just telling you for the multi-company support, right? So what we did was we gave an example of the location, and we said similarly you can go add your company field for all these stats, right? But the same example you can use for your custom fields. The one other step you would need here is you need to go and add your fields to the workflow, and also to add any other additional workflows, which is what I showed you in my deck. So the only additional steps, once you follow those steps to go extend your custom field as we have done for adding a company field, the only other task you need to do is basically add your custom workflow, right? And then basically you're done. If you want to add any validation workflow or any other workflow, you can add it. And that with your any additional validation you can add in the transformation. Those are the only two key steps, right? So the out-of-the-box transformation, when you go make a copy, that will just have our out-of-the-box validation, right? So if you're adding 5 or 6 custom fields, and if you want to add some validation checks for that, you can add that in the transformation itself. So for example, you may choose for three of those fields I want to add the validation in the transformation level because it's more applicable there, and for the rest 3 I want to add it at the validate workflow level. So that means you're going to do the three fields validation on the transformation, and you're going to create a custom workflow to do more validations on the other 3 fields, right? So let's summarize. So what we have learned today with this webinar. So how to best configure your service for UDM, how to obtain and run the configuration checker utility for all products, then best practices for using UDM for your jobs, how to troubleshoot, fix non-product issues. That's the main key, right? So you don't want to you want to try and fix your issues yourself if it's not a product issue, right? So what are those which we covered? Your configuration issues, your environment-related issues, any data-related issues, which could cause your UDM jobs to stop or stall, or if you face any timeouts and things like that, right? Again, the right way to customize a job. So because the reason I went through the step for customizations, and the reason we have a more clear documentation now, which we can go through, is basically we have seen a lot of customers want to customize and want to make sure that we give them the ability to do it right. Okay. And here are some references. So there's a knowledge article you can go through, which will give you more information on troubleshooting and everything there. And this is the main doc page for the data management UDM console area. Then another important page which I want everybody to go through before you do any data loading is the overview process, which is a one-page document. And I know people sometimes don't like to read pages and pages, so I would really recommend to at least go through this page to give you an overview in one page to say, hey, how do you plan, how do you prepare, how do you configure, how do you get ready and do your settings properly, so that when I click and load jobs, my job runs. I don't have to worry about it, right? And then again, of course, you should understand your spreadsheets properly, because not all spreadsheets you could go and try and modify and all that, right? So only modifier updates can only work in certain spreadsheets. So you go and understand your spreadsheet. There are subsections which tells you which spreadsheets which you can run for modifier, which you cannot, and all that good information is available. And finally, how to customize your job, right? That's relevant links and all good stuff there. With that, I think I turn it back over for Q&A.
Hey, Murali. Well, you did such a great job that there aren't any questions queued up at the moment, so I'd like to send out a gentle reminder. If you do have a question to be asked live, go ahead and use the Q&A section of the WebEx, and I will ask Murali. We'll just pause for a moment for you to ask your questions.
Actually, I can answer one question from the Q&A. They're asking, will the checker utility work on 8.1 AR server version? Yes. So you have to work with support to get the 9.9.0.9.1 the checker utility, and then you can run it against your 8.1 server. Right? Yeah, you can run it. It's not available as part of 8.1, but you can obtain it from support and you can point it to your 8.1 server and run it. It will work.
Okay, great. And there is a question here, Murali. So as far as how much of this webinar apply to 8.x, is it very different?
No, it should not be. The only thing I can think of is the server group configuration ranking form for AI. We need to find out if that was available. Otherwise, they can still use the best practices of making sure that all servers are running the DI server plugin, right? And they can make sure that the jobs are run on the primary server, right? So that thing we can make a note and we can get back when the ranking form was available for ATM integrated server. That's the only change.
Okay, there's another question here, and you may not be able to answer it, but I'm going to ask anyway. What is the recommended way to store passwords needed by a job to access services other than AR server?
I need more information, and I don't understand the question more clearly.
All right, we'll skip ahead and ask another question here. If one of the application servers configured in the wrap service wrap password is down, should the DM console stop working? It complains that it can't authenticate against that server that is, for example, under maintenance.
Okay, so if you have configured the servers in the okay, so in the UDM config form, you only configure the physical server names as in the AR server connect name, right? And say in the UDM wrap password form, you have other alias and other things, and one of that is causing an issue. I would recommend you to remove that temporarily till that server comes up, so that your jobs are not stuck due to a issue which is not related to your running your jobs. Does that answer the question?
Thank you very much. The next question is, I have created a custom AI job on development. What is the best approach to promote that AI job to other environments?
Okay, so first of all, if you're creating an AI job which is outside of, for example, the forms we have or things like that in ITSM, we don't recommend that. The reason is if you can directly create an AI job and point it to any of our target forms, then we do not need UDM, right? So the thing is, our ITSM forms and functionalities are complicated, and that's the reason we have a staging form and all that good stuff, so that we do all the validations and when we promote the data through a load form. And say you have a custom job and you want to basically you customize it based on our out-of-the-box job or for people or any of the forms we support, then fine, yeah, you can do the custom job. And for answer your question, how do you promote it? If you go to your Spoon client, there's a way to export your job and transformation. It's called KTR files, transformation files, and KJB files. So you can export the job and the transformation, and you can import them into your Spoon client in your other server. So that's the answer for your question. But please keep in mind the best practices, right? So we don't want you to have a custom job and point it to any of our forms directly, right? It's not recommended.
All right, very good. Right now, I don't see any questions to ask, so I'm going to go ahead and remind you, if you do have a question, please post it in the Q&A section, and I will ask Murali. Murali, there is a question here, and I'm not sure how much it applies to this webinar, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. The question is very simple. It says, what are the plans to upgrade PDI to 5X?
I don't, are they talking about process designer? I do not know.
Right. If the person who asked that question would like to
Yeah.
explain further, yeah, that would be fantastic in the Q&A section. I'll ask them. Is there any way to export and import the DMT configuration?
We don't recommend that because the configurations are specific for the server, and we don't recommend that. So, however, you have installed, if you done a fresh install, the configuration should be part of it, and all you need to do is go update it for your needs, as I've showed you in the webinar today. Yeah, but we wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, thank you. Now I do have clarification on the PDI question. It's Pentaho Data Integrator used by UDM.
Oh, okay. So the Pentaho version is what we use, and is there a plans to upgrade? I don't have any comments on that right now. I have to go see what is in our roadmap, and we'll get back to them when we post these answers.
Okay, here's a question here. When we export a job and import job on another environment, we are getting issues with reference to sub-transformations. Do we have any issue with SPOON 4.1.0?
I don't know. So when they export it, make sure that they export the thing together. For example, if there's a sub-transformation, they may have to export it together. But I don't recall anything we have come across with customers having these issues.
Here's a question. It says, in the future, will there be an automated way of deploying SPOON jobs that consist of many steps and sub-transformations? At the moment, to do this, we have to manually import and save each SPOON file.
I think that's more a question for the Atrium integration team. What are their plans are? Again, we provide Atrium integrator and all this we provide as a solution, but we don't govern those jobs and all that. Again, if you're asking about are we going to give them a dynamic way of creating and jobs, something like that, I don't think so, because I don't think that's our product.
All right, very good. This is a question regarding transactional data. It says, can we migrate CMDB CI data and their custom relationships, if any, using UDM?
Okay, so the migrate word is kind of tricky. So for me, migrate means I want to move the data from one server to the other. So that is not a UDM example. So I just want to take a moment and explain what we have in here. So UDM, the way UDM works, data management tool works, is it gets your data into ITSM, right? I mean, into our delivery product, ITSM, CMDB, all these areas. And when it does it, it basically creates the parent and child relationships with the new IDs. So for example, if I'm loading a CI, I will load a CI with a new ID, and if you're loading the relation to the CI, I will generate it and I'll create it, right? It's not a migration tool. So UDM should never be used to migrate data from one server to the other. So for that, we have another tool called DDM, which is what you need to use. And then if your question is, can you populate data for CIs and relationships and all that, and will it get created properly? The answer is yes. You can populate the spreadsheets and you'll be able to create those data. But if you're expecting it to migrate the CIs and relationship as is with the same IDs, then that's not going to happen with UDM.
All right. At this time, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to, let's see, I'm just making sure. All right, Murali, here's the one that's kind of a repeat of another one, but a customer wants to move foundation data using UDM from an old environment server to a new environment. How is this done?
Okay, so in the new environment, if you want to load the data and with new IDs, then yeah. So as I said, so for example, I have the old environment, I have company A, and the company A is the ID is 103, for example, right? So if you're expecting the company A to come as 103, it's not going to happen with UDM. That's a DDM requirement, right? It's a migration, it's a migration requirement, right? So, but if you say, hey, I want to load these data into this environment, right? And I don't, and once you load your companies, your people, your support groups, your location, all that in a fashion, then yeah, so all that set of data will get created, and the relationship will get created automatically in the new system, right? So yeah, you can load your foundation data through UDM, but that's not a migration thing. Once you load it, it'll be available. It'll have its own IDs and own relationships in there. If you want to maintain the IDs and the relationship from the old server to the new server, then do not use UDM. That's a DDM requirement. It's a migration requirement. So UDM is not a migration tool. UDM is a load tool, which basically loads your data with new IDs.
Okay, Murali, there is an attendee who is asking several questions, and we're going to ask the operator to open his mic or his phone. So Marcus, if you're out there and you hear me, go ahead and hit *0, and the operator will open up your phone line, and you can ask your questions directly.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear
Hello?
you.
Can you hear me? Okay, nice. So, I'm Marcus from ExxonMobil. Last 2 weeks we had a session with some BMC people in Houston. We are upgrading to version 9, and we are going to start using UDM, and we are having some trouble with the configuration because our environment has a single server group, but two main subgroups. One with 3 servers, which we call administration servers, application servers, for CMDB, reconciliation, AI, and escalation operations. So users don't get access to those servers. There is a specific load balancer for those 3 servers, in a kind of admin mid-tier, only for administration purpose, right? So on those 3 servers is where we want to run UDM, is where we want to configure UDM. On the other side, we have the users mid-tiers, the users load balancer, and let's say 3 other servers, only to handle users' requests for ITSM in general. If we set only these first admin servers in the UDM config form in RF password form, will the users be able to still access UDM or data management from the second subgroup? Because when I don't want to, what we are trying to work around is if we set all our servers in the UDM config in the password form, every time we have a problem with one of the servers, the whole data management console stop working, right? So what we want to do is to avoid the data management console and UDM stop working just because one of the users' application servers is down. And as we have too many servers, it's kind of hard to be removing those servers from the UDM config and from the app password. Our password form. So I'm trying to find a way to configure UDM for those administration servers only, those where our operations are running, and not on the users' application servers, but still let some users be able to access UDM.
Okay, I can answer that. So basically you have 2 sets of servers and you have 2 different mid-tiers, right? And you're saying
right.
one mid-tier is pointing to your admin servers where you want to run your jobs, right?
Right.
Okay, so there's 2 requirements here, right? So you said you want to run jobs too, and then you want the end users to also run jobs. Is that correct?
That's right. Okay,
so when so usually this kind of scenario will happen when you want to load jobs, your team wants to load jobs, right? That we call that onboarding, right? That means you have your own mid-tier, and then you basically load all your bulk data, like all your data before you go live, and then once you open up to your users, that's when you basically expose those servers in the UDM config form and drop password form, and then that's when you go put your ranking and all that good stuff, right? That way, how I explained, right? If someone creates a job on server 3, right, and it will always run on server 1. So UDM will always run only on one server, right? Which is a non-user server. So that's how you configure it. The user can run from 1, 2, or 3, doesn't matter. But because you configured the server 1 in the UDM config as your default server, any job which runs for any server will only go there, right? That's what you want once you go live and once you want to keep it. And if you want to do the initial load, yeah, you can have your own mid-tier URL and your setup, right? And you can make sure that you only configure for that. So for me, these are like 2 different settings. And if you say you want to put together, then you have no choice. You have to put everything together if you want. Again, I would say if you want users and you to do it, I wouldn't even care about the admin server. I don't need that, to be honest. You know what I'm saying? If you want end users and you and everybody to run jobs, then have one setup and configure one. You don't have to have your 2 mid-tiers. You don't need all that. You know what I'm saying? Right? If you have an onboarding scenario and then you go live and you have a scenario where for end users need to load jobs, yeah, then you can have these 2 mid-tiers and expose this mid-tier first, right, for the UDM and do it, and then for the other 3 servers, you can basically, if you don't want anybody to run job at that time, you can basically go temporarily disable the DI server in the monitor file, right? So that nobody can run jobs except for you guys from the different mid-tier, right? Once you're done loading and you want to expose it, then you get rid of your mid-tier URL. You don't need it anymore for the admin one. Make sure you can use your mid-tier which you expose to your end users, and make sure you configure it correctly so that the job will always run on the non-user facing server, even though the job is launched from the other servers. Right?
Okay.
Got it?
Okay, so if I want the users able to run jobs, I do need to have their servers under the RIF password. Otherwise, every time they try to open the console, it complains about authentication failure. Is that right?
Because you have 2 sets of requirements, if I hear it right. One requirement is you want to load data. Like say I'm going to assume you're administrators and you're going to load data to prepare for something, right? And then once you're ready and all your data is loaded, and if someone wants to load, some end user wants to load data for like hundreds and 50s or whatever, right? Yeah, that's what I call it as a production mode, where people can run jobs, right? So that kind of a use case is where I told you about the minimum setting configuration is required, 3 or 6 ports and all that good stuff, right? But if you're going to do an admin load and if you're going to do bulk loading, then you need a different kind of a setup, right? Don't confuse and mix both is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the scenario I'm talking about is the second one. Those end users that will be loading data are a specific group, a business group that handles which we call data management. They normally run, load, perform book loads through the year. So even
why can't you give them your mid-tier access to them for the bulk loads? Don't give them the end user mid-tier access.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly the question I'm trying to answer. If there is any other option, or if this is my only option, that's my question actually.
No, if you're going to load bulk, I would, and again, if you're going to load bulk, and if you're loading, are you loading on a production server or a non-production server?
Production.
Okay, again, production server, why are you loading bulk data? So that's another thing. We don't want the usage of UDM is different, right? So you want to get your data into ITSM and then use it in ITSM, right? So we don't want a regular cadence here, right? So again, if you can load jobs and bring in data, but make sure you don't bring in like, I don't know, hundreds, 10,000 or 30,000 or 40,000 records a day or something like that, because that means you need to increase your threading and you need to increase your ports and all that good stuff. Otherwise, you will have performance issues.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah. Again,
okay, thank you very much.
You're doing a migration, right, from one server to another?
From 8 to version 9.01.
Yeah. So again, you have a fresh install in 9.1 or you upgraded?
We're upgraded.
If you're upgrading, then don't use UDM, because UDM will not bring your data as is.
Oh no, but we're not loading the old data. It's just data management. This business group will be using UDM instead of using BRDI, for example. They used to use BRDI to load data, with their tasks, the daily tasks, and now they're going to start using UDM. But so far they've been using BRDI against the users' application servers. But what I'm finding out now is that I'll need to point them to use the admin servers only, not the user servers.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And what kind of data are they loading? People data?
People data and also people data. Also CIs if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Hey, Murali, I'm sorry we need to step in here, but we are going to ask the final question now.
Yep.
So this will be the final question for today's webinar. The question is, what is the recommended way of following up on the progress of validate/promote steps to determine when exactly they get stuck?
Okay. So when you say stuck, so again, the stuck happens for various reasons. That's what I tried to cover, right? So you need to find out the root cause where it's stuck, right? Especially on the load and validate, right? For the load and validate, the what goes behind the scenes is very simple. On the load, it's just trying to bring in. First, it's trying to authenticate, right? And then it's trying to bring in your data from the spreadsheet to the load form. So all load errors will be there in the AR cart and Java plugin files, right? So once you find your root cause and fix it, that stuff should go away, right? Same thing with the validate. So the validate can only get stuck. Because if you don't see errors and if it's stuck, then just look at CI events. It will tell you the reason why it's stuck, right? If it's a timeout which is happening, say, regularly, you need to take API SQL, filter logs to see which process is causing the timeout. And as I said, if the process is causing the timeout is UDM or CA plugin, you can look for options to give a more timeout period value for that, right? But if the process is from some other service, then you need to go and fix that. You need to take logs and find out where it's coming from and fix that. So this should not happen consistently, right? So that means if it's happening consistently, that means you're doing a workaround and you're not fixing the root cause. So you need to go fix your root cause and see it should never happen again, right? Kind of a scenario.
All right, thank you very much. Since there are no further questions, we will go ahead and bring this webinar to a close. As always, thank you for your attendance and participation.
Now and forever, we bring IT to life.